Good evening, everyone. I'm Joe Barnes, co-chair along with Laura Dorfman of CPC for this year. This is a CPC meeting of Wednesday, September 13th. I would first like to confirm that all members and persons anticipated on the agenda are present and can hear me. Before I take the roll, I would like to acknowledge and welcome a new member of our committee, Jim Rosenbaum. Jim, welcome aboard. I also want to acknowledge that we have our former chair, Peter Pingatore, with us tonight. As a spectator, I guess, you're no longer a member of the committee, but you'll be closely working with us as a member of ICHOC. So welcome, Peter. I think it goes without saying that those of us that have worked with CPC over the last 3 to 6 years are familiar with the work that Peter has done. He has provided great leadership. He's been a thoughtful and caring individual as a lead in the committee. He has done a great deal for the town as well as for the rest of us here. So, Peter, we're deeply appreciative of the work you've done. So, if you want to run again sometime, we'll take it back anytime. So, thank you very much.
Thanks, Joe.
So, members, when I call your name, if you'd please respond in the affirmative if you are here. Some of us are meeting remotely. Laura Dorfman.
Here.
Reg Foster.
Here.
Dave Hera.
Here.
Jean McKnight.
Here.
Jim Rosenbaum.
Here.
And I, Joe Barnes, the chair. Our staff, please acknowledge your presence. Cecilia Simchak.
Here.
Lauren Spinney.
Here.
Also, at some point soon, we'll be welcoming Emily Atkinberg, who is our new financial consultant. She'll be here for the first part of the meeting. I don't see her present yet.
I got you there.
No, okay. Well, we will acknowledge her when she arrives. For this meeting, the Needham CPC is convening in a hybrid format. The agenda is posted on the town's website and identifies how the public may join. Please note that this meeting is being recorded and that some attendees are participating by video conference. All supporting materials that have been provided to members of this body are available on the town's website, unless otherwise noted. The public is encouraged to follow along using a posted agenda unless the chair notes otherwise. Some ground rules which many of us have gone over before. For effective and clear conduct of our business and to ensure accurate meeting minutes. During the course of the evening, I will introduce each speaker on the agenda. After they conclude their remarks, the chair will go down the line of members, inviting each by name to provide any comment, questions, or motions. We ask members to please hold until your name is called. For committee members, please use the raise your hand function on the Zoom app or raise your hand if you are present in this meeting. Remember the listening public, this is a public meeting, not a public hearing. Although you may want to make a statement or ask a question, the time for doing so is at a public hearing. If you do have a question or comment, you can email our staff, Cecilia Simchak or Lauren Spinney. That concludes the introduction. We all have an agenda for tonight. Okay. Our first order of business will be to approve minutes from previous meetings. Gonna pull them up.
I can if you would like me to.
Do we know the dates of the minutes that we're approving?
We do. I would suggest we do them one by one, and then if we have no reason to change the content, we can approve them as one batch.
Great.
There are a few typos throughout the minutes, but nothing in the content. And I think if we see any, then we can refer the typo or the note to you, Lauren. Is that right?
Please do, and then I'll make that
Yeah.
correction before they're posted.
There was a huge number of minutes and page upon page, so there's bound to be a typo that shows up from time to time. Dave,
Oh, do we have to go through all of them, or can we just
we can, no, we can do them, well, I suggest we do them one by one and then approve it.
Of minutes? Yeah, am I missing?
Oh,
Yeah,
There's seven.
Jean?
total.
I have comments on,
I
or
think there's
questions
two
on
PDFs.
minor things on all of them
Ah,
except the last. one.
Sorry.
Okay,
The six-
well, let's do them one by one then, get them right.
Supposed to improve this. Oh.
Excuse me for the delay here.
Oh, yeah, here we go. Okay. Sorry, I was just confused. I don't understand the go, I like click on it.
Joe,
Which-
can I just, I'm sorry, I need to interrupt for 1 second. Emily is looking for a link to the meeting. Do you want me to send her the link to on the town's website, or Cecilia or Lauren, did you want to send her something else?
I can send it.
Okay, thanks.
All right, let's do them one by one. January 26th of 22. I think that's the first one we have to deal with, right, Jean?
Yes,
Do you have a comment? Anyone have a comment on the content of the minutes?
I have a comment on what appears to be a missing word.
Okay,
On page 4, the last page, on the item, boat launch. There's a sentence, R. Foster stated that he did a site,
yeah,
and the word visit is missing.
right, I noted that also. I would suggest if there are typos or missing words, let's make a list of those and send them to Lauren rather than make a huge change in the minutes. Is that okay with you, Jean?
It is, I have a couple questions. that go
Okay.
Beyond that.
Go ahead.
More like questions and comments.
All right,
Do you want to, does anybody else have a comment on that? or
anyone
shall
else
I
on,
go to
on
Feb-
January 26th?
Shall we go to February?
You, one moved to February. Anyone else, any comment?
Excuse me, yeah, so you have substantive comments on these minutes that we're just doing?
Are they substantive, he's asking, or missing words or typo?
Because I'm fine just saying, give all missing words and typos
Well,
to.
I'll give me a minute
Sure,
then, to determine whether my comments are something that.
I do have
require
one on
a
this minutes here.
response,
okay.
Or just,
File.
All right, let me see what.
Reg, let's just let Jean sort this
Yeah.
through for a second.
sorry, sometimes it's hard to say. That
Yeah,
It's like the meaning of a sentence.
And also, Jean, that type of thing, if it's not something that's really, really inaccurate, maybe Lauren, you could email to Lauren and Cecilia and Joe and me, and maybe that could be the way that's handled.
I mean, I can do that. I guess a question that I have that continues from meeting to meeting and is the amount of money requested by the housing authority for Linden Chambers in the minutes of, and if you answer the question for me on this one, then I'll just make the same change on the other ones. On the February 23rd minutes, it's item under discussion on applications, item 2, Needham Housing Authority pre-development design costs, Linden Chambers. The first sentence says, this request is for $1,200,000 to prepare a preliminary scheme. However, 2 sentences down, it says, the request has increased from $1,200,000 to a little over 1.4 million. So shouldn't this first sentence say the request is for 1.4 million? If it has
I
increased.
believe that's in real, I'm gonna jog my memory here. I believe that's in real time. So I believe at the beginning of the meeting, we were under the impression it was one amount, and then during the meeting, it came to our attention that it increased. I know there was a lot of moving around with the amount for the request, so
Then it
it's
should
not
say-
gonna match exactly what it ended up being. It's
Okay.
gonna kind of,
I can certainly go back to the
Well, we can double
recording,
check,
but
yeah.
it sounds to me like,
So maybe it should just say the request was increased. Because has implied something that happened in the past, it seems to me.
Yeah, but the
Uh,
request is for 1.4 something, that's the bottom line on
Yeah.
that. Yes, okay,
Yeah,
all right.
and I suppose however it's explained, but it looks like in most of the minutes, it repeats the 1.2 million, even though it's later, and one would think we were dealing, see, in the March 9th minutes, it also says this request is for 1.2 million. And so that's March 9th, and so you don't, there's one more mention of it on page 2, I think here, one minute.
All right, if it's
Uh,
if 1.4 is the number we want to be accurate. Let's have Lauren make
All right.
that change throughout. Let's jump back to January.
And I'm all set, the other things are just.
Okay, all right.
Chair, I wanted to
Great.
go back to January, but.
Yep.
It wasn't 1.4 million, it was 1.386 million ultimately.
Yeah, but later, that's it.
And
Says
it
that
went
later.
from 1.2 originally in December 1st to 1.386.
Mhm.
For, because we had a better, estimate, and also because, I believe that Judy suggested we build in a contingency of 10%, if I recollect. So this is obviously ancient recollections and ancient neurons up here, and I delegate all this to Lauren to sort out, but you're
Okay.
right.
Rich, I think the application request says 1,386,000.
Okay, I don't have that in front of me, so.
I think we also started when we were talking about it, just shortening it to 1.4 million because we got tired of saying $1,386,000.
Yeah, okay, so we're good. Okay,
So
When I prepared them, it was based on the
report.
So
All right,
it was
hold a
just,
second.
yeah.
Lauren,
Okay,
oh,
sorry.
I'm so sorry. When I prepared the minutes, it was based on the video
Yeah.
recording, so if it was being kind of shortened,
I believe that's what it
then
was.
that's what I was kind of transcribing. I
no, that's
would
okay, that's,
like me to go back and what was
No.
stated versus actual. I can go back and make that adjustment.
okay,
I'd stick to what you have done. 1.386 is fine.
But certainly Jean has a point that if it did change as of that meeting, then in subsequent meetings, the number should.
It should
update.
reflect that, yes,
So
you're right,
that-
you're right.
Right.
Any other comments on January 26th?
Yes, I had one.
Okay,
These, the file that I got, this is not very important. It had as a, the file name date was 9/13/23 as opposed to the date of the actual meeting of January 26th, 22.
Oh, it's just the pack of minutes for tonight's meeting that we were approving.
No, it says minutes for 9/13/23 for the file name for the particular minutes. And there were two separate minutes, the second minutes that you sent out most recently, yesterday, had the right date on them.
Sure, there's, I think maybe one, two,
It's,
three, four.
the
Yeah,
convention is.
I think
the-
there's 5 or 6 in that 9/13 pack.
It should have had minutes packet, I
Yes.
think it's not the individual minutes, it's the packet of minutes that we're looking to approve for this meeting.
When I upload them to the website, they'll be individual and the files will be named individually.
do you have a number of minutes following that first one?
No.
Well, if
Yes,
you
I do.
scroll down.
Yeah, I do, yeah, I got it, understand, yeah.
Each of the minutes has a correct date right on it.
Yep.
Front page.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, any other comments then on the 23rd? Okay, and once again, if we see a typo or word missing, we will get that to you, okay? Going to March 2nd. Questions or comments? Okay. Moving on to March 9th.
Oh, this is
Go ahead.
really a question, not just perhaps misspelling. On page, we're March, are we on March?
March 9th.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Okay, it's all right. No
March
comments on 9th. So let's go to March 16th.
Yeah, on the third page, on Emery Grover renovation project, it says, B. Dermody introduced Dan Goodman,
Yeah,
who in turn, shouldn't that be? is
Should be
that
Gutekunst,
Dan Gutekunst?
Yeah.
Okay.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, you're right. Anything else on the, that set of minutes?
Yes, on the boat launch on the next page, there's a reference to say, that says, due to COVID and other reasons, work did not begin until 2021. I think what meant is design work did not begin. Because I don't think work ever began.
Which minutes are we in now? We,
The same, the one we were just
The
focused on, the 16th.
16.
Page 3, boat launch. And under boat launch, which is at the bottom of the third page. Due to, in the third, fourth line, due to COVID and other reasons, work did not begin until 2021. I think that means design work. Because the previous sentence, there was a previous application for $30,000 and 215 for design funds to upgrade the launch. However, due to COVID and other reasons, I think it's design work did not begin until 2021. Is that right?
Do you recall,
That
Cecilia?
is correct. It's design work.
Design work, okay,
So I'll put that in
all right.
an email. I just wanted to check whether that was in fact what the facts are.
Can always count on your Hawkeye, Gene. Well done.
I'm a compulsive editor.
No. The next one in this particular packet is July 19th. Comments, questions?
Only that my own name is.
That's of 2023, is that correct?
That is 2023, correct?
So we're jumping, because we had the minutes of the other 2022 meetings already.
Yes. All right, that's what I have in that particular packet, Cecilia, right?
Yeah.
Before we jump to the other one?
Yep.
All right, having heard comments and questions and corrections, anyone want to move on this? To accept minutes as
Can I
written
just
with
ask,
correction?
may I ask that you also include the June 23rd, 23, which was separate only because it was to be approved at the last meeting, but when we took the vote, it wasn't
Yeah.
specifically referenced. So I just wanted to make sure it was officially approved.
All right. Well, let's, that was.
Is that a separate document?
It is, it's in a
Yeah,
separate.
is that separate?
Yeah,
All right, so we should probably look at that one first. Can we see that one, Lauren, in this packet?
Sure. You guys also received it and reviewed it prior to the last meeting. It just wasn't named. when
Oh,
we
I
took
see it.
the
It's
vote.
right there in the packet you sent us all. Got it. Yeah, we should look at that first and then we can maybe approve them all at once.
so this is June 23rd. 2023, okay.
It's the last attachment.
Okay. Questions,
the
comments,
packet.
anyone? Hearing none. I would ask someone, they wish to move the,
I move
Dave,
that we approve the minutes. Do we need a name up?
I don't think so. I think as a
Okay.
whole,
The minutes as presented.
Right,
as presented.
We should put just the dates in them, just so it's very clear.
All right,
So it'll be June 23rd, 2023, January 26th, 2022, February 23rd, 2022, March 2nd, 2022, March 9th, 2022, March 16th, 2022, and July 19th, 2023.
I believe it's February 13th, 2022.
13.
I heard Dave say that
Oh, excuse me.
in his motion.
so I,
Yeah.
so I
It says
Just to
February.
clarify,
I filled in.
I clarify my motion that.
Is that a mistake that
I moved that
it's
we,
written here, February 23rd?
Oh, no, then that is probably correct. Okay, I misheard. Thank you.
I second the motion.
well, I was gonna clarify my motion.
Okay, I secondly clarified.
all right. All in favor? signify by saying
Aye.
aye.
Do a roll call because
Roll
we have
call, Bill.
somebody.
Yep.
Yeah.
Dave Hara,
Aye.
James Rosenblum.
I abstain because I,
No, you
That's
can-
right.
You can approve minutes.
oh, I can, okay.
You
Okay,
can, you
then I
can.
approve.
Yeah.
Gene McKnight,
Aye.
Reg Foster,
I,
and the chair votes aye as
Just for
well.
minutes.
Lauren,
And
Uh,
Laura
Laura.
Dorfman votes aye. I vote aye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
point of
Emily is
information, Mr.
here
Chair.
now.
I'm sorry.
Point of
Oh, good.
information.
Point of information.
Are we all caught up?
We are all caught up, I believe,
we are not. No,
with
there
the
are,
exception of which,
there are, April through. I have to look at it. There are remaining 2022 minutes to be completed.
Well, never,
April through November. And then we will be caught up.
That's great.
Well, that's a huge task to get this
Yeah.
far, I must say.
a great job, Lauren.
yeah,
We're like 3 years behind in the Conservation Commission.
very appreciative.
Yeah.
It's so much getting caught up. And it's so great to read it all over again and just remember everything that
memory.
happened. Which helps to lead
Did you say
today.
that,
Emily's
Emily's
here
here?
now. I can let her in when she's ready.
okay.
Okay,
The
so,
the chair is taking the liberty here of rearranging the agenda a little bit. We have with us Emily Achtenberg, who is our new financial consultant. We don't want to keep her for the entire meeting, so I thought that we would move the status of the Needham Housing Authority request up into the next agenda item so that she can have a listen to what we might be learning from Reg Foster, if he has any update for us. Emily, welcome.
Hi, glad to be here.
Before we jump
Hi,
into
Emily.
this, would you be able to give us just a quick background on yourself and maybe what you're able to bring to the table for us?
Sure. So I am an affordable housing consultant. I've been doing this work for, well, let's say since I was in the cradle. That was more than 40 years ago. And I've been mostly focusing in the past on the preservation of existing affordable housing, working with cities and towns, nonprofits, and community groups to preserve developments that are at risk of loss, either through acquisition or other means. And in recent years, I have been doing a lot of work on public housing redevelopment, restructuring. I have been involved in 2 situations where a state public housing development similar to the ones that you're involved with is being converted to a affordable housing development with units added in both cases. One in Chelsea, I was a consultant to the Chelsea Housing Authority, and currently consulting with the Salem Housing Authority and Beacon Development, which is in the process of undergoing that same kind of redevelopment process. So, and I'm also consulting with the town of Wellfleet on various other new affordable housing developments. So I'm very excited about this opportunity. It sounds like you have a lot on your plate. Like other towns, there's a lot at stake here, and you will, I'm sure, are being asked for more money than you can imagine putting in. It's the way of the times because costs, of course, are escalating and the needs are enormous. And I'm very happy to be able to help you out.
Well, we're lucky to have you, Emily. Thank you for giving some time to us. And hopefully you'll be able to bring some wisdom to this committee. Having said that, do we have an update at all, Reg, on the status of the Housing Authority request?
So I can certainly give an update. I didn't prepare anything for tonight. Maybe we can talk about whether we need a more lengthy update at our next meeting or not. I'm mindful that we have new members, obviously, not just Jim, but presumably another new member or 2 that will be joining us. And we have Emily joining us. And there's also a new town committee, the T-Chalk, starting up at some point. I'm not quite sure when. Peter is our representative on T-Chalk. And I just asked him, and he's not sure when it's meeting first either. But so I'm just gonna take a 5 minutes, if that's what you're looking for, and just say where things are at. right
Perfect.
now. And if anybody has any questions, you can ask me. So there,
Can you identify who you are?
oh, and I'm Reg
Who are
Foster.
you? What do you do?
Who am I? Sometimes I wonder when I get up in the morning. I'm a member of the CPC. I am the Needham Housing Authority representative on the CPC, but I'm also the chair of the Housing Authority as well. Several hats, and I've been involved in this effort to try that we are in the middle of now, trying to get that going for several years. So we have two projects going right now, the Linden Chambers redevelopment project, and the goal there is to, the units are totally worn out. They need to be torn down and replaced, 152 units, studio apartments for, seniors and disabled, very substandard, no elevators, a lot of problems. And we have to replace all 152 with one-bedroom apartments and add another plus or minus 100 additional new affordable units while we're at it. We kicked off a design or engineering process with the architect firm in need of BH&A in January. We completed the general design in June. We have had several rounds of community engagement, including a presentation to the planning board towards the end of June of that conceptual design. And now we're heads down into schematic design. If people know what that means, it's the next stage of design detail. So everybody's pedal to the metal, and the current plan is to publish that so that it can be reviewed, at least parts of it anyway, reviewed by the planning board in another round of meetings starting in October. And it's at that round of meetings that they will be taking the decision as to whether or not to sponsor the zoning changes and amendments that we need spring 2024 town meeting to pass if we are going to do what the plan is. It's also included a very intense value engineering exercise this summer because whoever was saying it earlier today, I think it was Emily, just said it. We had the first round of cost estimates on our conceptual design that we went over to the planning board, and where, it was really shocking how much construction costs have gone up for all the factors we all read about in the newspaper. So we've been working on that very, very intensively as well all summer. That's probably the biggest new piece of news. Not surprising, I think, but it's a heavy lift. That's going along. If town meeting approves the zoning changes, and assuming all the steps we go, with many steps have to happen in order for that to happen with the finance committee, the select board, as well as the planning board. But should they do that, then the plan is to go into site plan review after town meeting with the planning board, with the final design, develop construction documents, put in the funding application for the majority of the funds, which are tax credit funds, and another sort of, we call it a layer cake of various funding sources. And that goes in the fall of 2024. And the funding round is completed, repetitive funding round, so it's completed in the early spring of 2025. And should we be able to win the funding that we need, then we go into construction towards the end of 2025. So that's a brief 90,000 foot flyby of where things are at right now and where it's going. The other project's been supported by the CPC, thank you very much, and by town meeting, is the Seabeds and Cook Captain Robert Cook Drive and Seabeds Way. Modernization and preservation of those units. There are 76 units there. There are 30 family units and 46 senior units, 1-bedroom apartments. The family units are 2, 3, and 4-bedroom apartments. They were built in the early 80s, so they're about 40 years old right now. And they've suffered from a lot of deferred maintenance and, sort of starvation, not as much as in the stateside, but, under subsidized. And they're they're not tear downs, but they need, a major investment to bring them up to 21st century standards and really preserve them for the next 40 plus years. So these are federally subsidized properties as opposed to Linden Chambers of state subsidized projects. So there's two different sort of funding strategies for those two projects. On the federal side, there's a fairly well-worn path since 2013 that has an acronym called RAD, Rental Assistance Demonstration, with various other tools that you can bring to bear. We've been working with the Cambridge Housing Authority on both projects as our development consultant in the last 2 years. And we've taken a bunch of steps and done a bunch of analysis. So literally, as I speak in the next few days, we're submitting what is called repositioning applications, which what that means is we're going to move from one funding stream from the feds to a different funding stream in the feds. And that different funding stream has the wonderful characteristic of increasing the amount of annual subsidy that we get from the feds over what we already get here by $900,000 to $1 million a year for Seabeds and Cook. And then we can turn around and leverage those funds, that funding stream, to the kind of capital investment that we need to do in order to do this, basically gut renovation and modernization of these properties. Thanks to the support from the CPC and our being able to raise other sources of pre-development funds, we approved $241,000 worth of CPC funding last spring. Town meeting voted last spring. We put out an RFP for another designer, architect, designer, engineering services firm. And that process has gone all summer. It's a 30B process. And the selection committee and the board wound up picking BH&A again. By the way, they do several other projects in town. They're doing currently doing the Emery Grover restoration project, and they previously did the Rosemary Pool project. So they're kind of getting a little bit of a, franchise here, going here and Needham. But they were clearly the best firm the second time around, went on absolutely on the merits. And we just had the kickoff meeting with that team last Thursday. And we're now in the very beginning stages of they're doing site reviews, so there's a little master planning process, resident meetings, they're just getting their heads wrapped around what needs to be done. Up until now, again, funded by the NHA, but up until now, we've done a complete existing conditions review of both properties, Seabeds and Cook. So there's 100-page reports with detailed narrative description of all the repairs and everything that's needed in a spreadsheet with, 3 or 4 page spreadsheet, adding up all the different repairs in 3 priority categories. Priority 1, which is urgent and needed within the next 3 years. Priority 2 is 3 to 10 years, and priority 3 is 10 to 20 years. And our hopes is to get all of that done, or almost all of that done, so that those properties can continue forward for the next 40 plus years, and still serve the deeply affordable housing community. So that's the update.
Very good, very good. Thank you. Before we get to committee members, Emily, do you have any questions or comments while you're here?
Well, I have a million questions, but probably not the right time. I guess just my high level questions. Is there a connection between these two projects in relation to this CPC funding or your funding strategy? The Seabeds and Cook and the Linden
Yeah.
Chamber.
Yes, and all of us are learning about it, including the CPC have been learning about this, but we're doing a section 18, section 18 blend repositioning at Seabeds and Cook. Deliberately, it's a little bit harder to do and it has some disadvantages, but it does free up 60 fair cloth units, and we're looking at using those as cross subsidy over at Linden Chambers, where funding is a lot scarcer to try to get that project done.
Okay.
But there's a whole 30-page paper on the subject that, you know, I'm sure you're gonna want to take a look at too, so. I do think there's, you know, one of the things that's on my mind is, again, for the newer CPC members, what should we be doing to kind of get them up to the same level as the continuing CPC members? Because we spent a lot of time on this in the last year because with the Linden Chambers and the Seabeds applications, and part of that led to the need to have somebody like Emily on board. So there's getting the CPC members up to speed. We have a new TCHOCS committee. Those are all those people except Mr. Pingatore over here are relatively new to all this as well. So there's sort of a getting up to speed training on that. And then there's our consultant that you know, I think would be well served if she spent some time talking to our Cambridge Housing Authority consultants and spending some of her.
Excuse me,
consulting
Reg.
time Speed.
Reg, I think, I totally understand that, but I think we're getting away from what we want to just do tonight, which is just introduce Emily and give her a sense of what's happening.
Yeah.
I agree with all of those things that you're saying, but that's a little more complicated, and we don't even have all our members yet. So I think we can't go down that road tonight, is what I think. I don't know if you agree, Joe.
I agree. Yeah, yeah. Dave?
I just have a brief question. When do you think the next application for the CPC will be?
November 1st, 2023.
Okay. So it's coming right up.
That's why I know, I don't mean to be rude to Laura or Joe, but there's only 6 weeks between now and when that happens. And I'm not trying to say we should do the training tonight, but I'm advocating that maybe some planning be done to figure out when that's going to be done and how it's going to be fit into the schedule, because it's not only a CPC scheduling thing, but you know, who and how and when that's done is also a scheduling thing on our side as well.
Of course.
Well,
No, we understand.
Yeah, there's no question that we have to bring new members up to speed on Linden Chambers especially, with that coming so closely. Let me ask, Reg, do you believe that in this window between now and application due date, all the funding, all those questions about the funding will be in place that will satisfy the committee when an application comes forward?
Yes.
Okay. Gene?
Having read over these minutes so recently, I was reminded that there was a request for 62,500 for surveys that included not only the Linden Chambers, but the area where the 60 so-called bungalows are that might be converted later to 2 families. Did that funding request go forward?
Yes.
And you got the money for that?
Yes, so it was about $80,000, and we used that to do an existing condition survey at High Rock Homes. So that document also exists. However, we can't do 3 projects at the same time. You know, it's a challenge to do 2 projects at the same time, and we wouldn't do that, except that we're getting the cross subsidy from Seabeds and Cook. And so the High Rock Homes project that the survey that CPC funded, you know, right now is on the shelf, and we will be coming back to it in about a year and getting going on the, you know, that part of the redevelopment that needs to be done, the bungalows in the High Rock area.
To the extent that survey work was needed, and I'm thinking, I mean, a surveyor who goes out and clears the lots and Is that what was meant and was that done?
It wasn't a survey as much as it was, for a repositioning application, you have to assess the existing conditions.
So it's a survey of existing
Right.
physical conditions.
So it
rather
says all
than
the boilers are
Plan
shot.
survey.
So yeah, it's all the boilers shot, or the roofs are shot, or the plumbing shot, and so forth, and then you add that all up. And it's part, we looked at holistically at all of our property, our federal properties. To see, what the benefit, what the right strategy for repositioning is. There's several different tools that can be used. And so our selection of the tool to be used for Seabeds and Cook was also informed by, we know what we're gonna be doing with, High Rock Homes, which is in the worst condition of all our properties, and logically should be the first we are going after, but it's the hardest to do. And so we, made it as, strategic decision to go the way we're going right now. But eventually, when we do that same analysis that I was answering for Emily's question, that would add another $500,000 a year of additional subsidy when we get around to doing per year, when we get around to doing High Rock Homes.
Joe, do we
Yes.
wanna see if Emily has other questions while we have her here?
Yes, I'd like to. I thought she was finished though. Emily, any more comments or questions?
I guess I have a couple of other ones. Is your request going, I don't mean to jump the gun, but if you can answer this, is the request that's gonna be coming into this committee going to be for pre-development funds or funds that you would need committed at closing, or both?
The latter. We've already got all the pre-development funds because we got an ARPA of funding through our state representative Denise Garlick was just amazing in getting us $1.25 million worth of pre-development funds that we were we are using now as we speak. And then when we combine that with the 1.386, but not 1.4 contribution we got from the CPC, we funded our entire pre-development budget for that project. Thank you, Denise Scarlett. And town meeting.
Anything else, Emily?
And my other higher level question is, when in this process do you select a developer? And how is that gonna fit in?
So we have, we're going into negotiations now. And we hope to have a development agreement negotiated for both projects this fall.
With the developer who will be CIJ, or that's still not known, or that's the plan?
I'm sorry, what's the question?
The developer being Cambridge Housing Authority?
Yes.
Or is, right, okay.
Emily, did you wanna, you made a comment to us about the role of the developer and when that comes into play. Is that something you wanna discuss
Well, I
now,
think-
or?
I think it was answered, I guess what I'm hearing, there was concern about the whether this request was going to be for substantial pre-development funds, and my comment was that generally, the developer is responsible at a certain point for funding the pre-development costs and taking the risk. And it sounds like the request to you is not going to be for pre-development, but for future funds that have to be committed now, but not spent now. So they are not at risk in the same way that pre-development funds, and that, whatever arrangement is made with the developer for pre-development funding, it's not really going to affect you at that same level. That was my question. And it sounds
Okay.
like that's been answered.
Except that we did provide some of the pre-development funds, yeah.
Yes.
Laura, anything else?
No, I'm not, unless Emily has anything else. She is still going to, she's got to read up on all the stuff. We gave her a whole bunch of stuff, Reg, on the project, specifically Linden Chambers for right now. So she's got to get familiar with all that. And then we plan to, have some sort of regular meetings with her, so that as we go through this. But we haven't figured out a schedule for that yet. Is that right, Joe?
That's
Do I have that
correct.
right?
Yep. Can I ask Reg the one question here? The zoning issue, is that's gonna be taken care of between now and November 1st?
Now, between now and November first, whatever you mean by taking care of, I'm not sure, but it's going to
The
be.
changes on the change?
Start addressing it in October. So on October 3rd, we will be going before the planning board. And we will be presenting the schematic design, which will reflect this, engineering exercise, but also reflect further progressing the design. And the planning board is planning to, we have a member of the planning board here to correct me if I get anything wrong, but, who was formerly the vice chair. But, the planning board is planning on perhaps needing more than one meeting, more than the October 3rd meeting, because it's a major sort of public engagement opportunity as well, above and beyond, what we do separately. So the month of, the rough plan right now is the month of October and maybe November is going to be the planning board digesting where things are at. And coming and we're also going to be presenting a specific zoning amendment approach that's already had preliminary discussions in June. And the planning board will be reviewing that specific, the draft warrant articles kind of specifics here, and the dimensional requirements and so forth, and how it fits into the overall strategy for the town and the area. And if they like what they see, then maybe as early as December, but certainly no later than January, there is a formal planning board process that every zoning amendment has to go through. More public hearings, review by the select board, review by the finance committee, and other things I probably don't even know yet. But ultimately by March-ish, you finish that and you have warrant articles that go into the printed warrant that goes out for spring 2024 town meeting.
Right.
So yes, it's all been spelled out. We have a one-page schedule that's sort of our master plan for doing all of that. That was, worked out with Lee Newman and Alex Clee.
Okay, so we should anticipate the application in by November 1st.
Absolutely.
Okay.
That's the deadline, right?
Anything else, Laura, members? Question?
Not unless Emily has anything she wants to add or ask.
No, that's fine. I'll just say that I'm happy to meet with Cambridge Housing Authority as soon as it's appropriate. We'll discuss that further to help get up to speed.
Great.
We're ready. So,
Okay, well, why don't we'll talk about that for sure. And I think that's a great idea.
Yep. All right, thanks, Reg. Thank you.
Thanks, Emily.
Thank you.
Thanks, Emily. We're all
Bye.
set. All right, moving on to the agenda here. The next item is the withdrawal of the FY 2024-04 Claxon Field application. We voted to approve this last year. And now the withdrawal email requires us to accept the withdrawal and vote on that. Any comments or questions? Anybody?
I got it.
Yes, Dave?
I'm just curious if anybody has any information about why it was withdrawn.
I think the town.
I do.
I think the town is gonna be paying for it.
So the project itself is still moving forward at the special
Yeah,
town
no.
meeting. It's just the funding is going to come all from the town instead of CPC.
I think there was so much uncertainty about the
Yeah.
rising costs that they really couldn't bring a figure to us that would be palatable or with good solid knowledge, so. they're gonna take it on their own. Okay,
Well, I move that we accept the withdrawal of the CPC application for Claxton Field.
I second.
okay, roll call vote. Dave?
Aye.
Aye. Jim?
Aye.
Rich?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye as well. We should have you identify your name before you.
And Laura votes aye. It's
Okay,
okay.
my mistake, you should be identifying yourself before you vote. We'll get warmed up here as we go along here throughout the winter.
You're doing
Um,
great.
Yeah, well, we're still standing. New member update. I can weigh in on this. Laura and I will be part of an interviews tomorrow for candidate to be filled by the select board. They have one spot to fill on our committee. And hopefully we'll make a choice or the Kevin will be able to make a choice as a select person with input from us on who that replacement will be. We're still waiting for the moderator to select or at least to create an interview process for the two spots that he has. I've been in touch with him. He's not available right now, but hopefully he knows that it's a critical piece of our committee, and we'll get information on that and interview process going with him as soon as possible. So we should be adding a new member before the next meeting we have. Hopefully we'll have two more beyond that in the near future. Laura, want to add anything to that?
No, I think you covered it. Thanks.
Okay, okay. The fall application rollout. Cecilia or Lauren, you want to take the lead on that?
Sure. The fall application itself, as well as the updated process document, was published to the CPC website. We also put out notice in the town newsletter to kind of advertise with a little bit of an informational piece in the newsletter. And we've started to, we've received some inquiries and questions, at least with respect to one project. And then obviously we know we're anticipating the housing authority project. So that's where it stands. It's out, it's in the public domain. Try to spread the word.
Thank you, Lauren. Any questions, comments, anyone? We should take a look at the proposed schedule before we talk about the next item. We have something on the agenda here for the upcoming schedule for the year. The 23-24 schedule for
It was in our
CPC.
packets.
It was in the packet.
We should have, it should have been on the agenda.
Yeah, it's not on the agenda, but let's,
Sorry.
I think that's part of the application rollout
Yeah.
in my point.
okay, all right.
Good.
Which brings us to the fact that the next item on the agenda is a public hearing in October. Lauren and I have had discussion, and most recently with Lauren and I have spoken about the format for the public hearing, which will be different than public hearings in the past, especially the one last year, where we have had applicants make a presentation, talk about the need for the request, and we would have an opportunity then for the applicants to show themselves before the public. We don't have that. When we have the proposed date for the public hearing, it's going to be looking a little bit differently in that there'll be no applications in at that time. It'll be the CPC as a committee entertaining the public who may or may not wish to comment or participate, but thinking how to make it most worthwhile and valuable for those who might attend. We thought that it might be a good opportunity for us to have a brief presentation on who we are, the members come from where, what is the role that CPC plays in the town, maybe talk about some of the larger projects that we've funded, some of the smaller. the buckets that we talk about for the money. Might be an opportunity anyway to interact with folks who may not have a clear understanding of who we are or what we do. I don't know what the committee feels about a format like that, or whether you can think of any way to make it more valuable to those who may want to be part of this. Dave?
Is this an annual thing? Like, it's a
I think
CPC
we're talking
done this
about
every
even
year?
maybe doing it twice a year. Maybe in the fall now and then again in the spring. We're doing the spring when we have the applications in and people have the chance to make.
No, but I mean historically, is that it's something that the CPC has done?
I don't think we've done it twice. have
Never,
we?
never done it in the fall.
We haven't done it since I've been around. I don't know, Peter, if you've ever done it historically.
We haven't done it in past years in the fall. And if I may speak, Mr. Chair, sorry.
Recognize Peter.
So, and this kind of idea originated really as kind of focusing on kind of best practices for the committee, and it was based on information that was provided to us from one of our training sessions by Stuart Saganor, who's the executive director for the Community Preservation Alliance. It's a not-for-profit that we're a member of, and it's kind of this resource that's available to all members, all participating towns, for the community that we have devote funds to community preservation. And so a close reading of the statute really does require a hearing, a public hearing, for community input on what their priorities are. As a matter of fact, it doesn't necessarily require a public hearing on the applications themselves. So we've always done it on the applications, and in recent years have tried to roll in on the back end, just public input generally. And I'm going on for too long, sorry.
No.
But I had thought that just in terms of establishing kind of best practices, it might be nice to actually hear from the public back what their real wants are and what their priorities are, as opposed to assessing applications that have been presented to them and whether or not they like them or disagree.
Jean?
I think people perhaps don't really know what the town has done with its community development funds over the years. And if there were a couple of photos of various projects even to put on a screen, but then of course the numbers without getting so complicated that people can't follow it, but you know, something clear about the money that has been spent for the various projects, and mentioning things like we're still paying for the town hall. We can use the community development funds to borrow money, and with the anticipation of paying it from future income, and we have. And then we have the requirement for certain buckets to be filled every year. And this is how much we have in each bucket. So I think if people get an idea of what we have done, what funds what resources we have, and what we can do, that seems to me to be the message for the fall.
We had talked about a PowerPoint presentation, something that would hit on some of the things you've just mentioned, that would be an information kind of night, as well as an opportunity for people to share what their priorities might be, as Peter mentioned, but yes,
Yeah,
Dave.
no, I second that. I think a PowerPoint presentation no longer than, 10 or 15 minutes. That would highlight these things, socially what Gene says. I think that would be the way to go. But I think a more important issue is getting people to attend this hearing, because, my observation is that there's just not a lot of interest out there. And it may be that people just don't know what's going on. So I would think that if we could do something to gin up some interest here, then that would be even more important than the presentation. I mean,
What would be the logical way to publicize something like this, Cecilia Long?
We could push it out in the town newsletter, which goes to, last I checked, it was either 3,000 or 5,000 people, residents in town, I don't remember. We could push it out on some of the social media sites. We can post it on the website.
there's this,
We can put signs up. That's kind of the best way. I know we did one in DPW, like a information, come ask us questions type of session, and that's kind of how we pushed it out.
there's this Harvest Fair coming up.
Yeah.
I don't know if there's you know, I know the town has a bunch of different,
The-
booths there, maybe.
My department will have a table, so maybe we could make a flyer and I could ask whoever's helping man the table if they could just pass those out on my behalf. I'll be out of town, otherwise I would be there.
Oh, that's a very good idea.
Uh,
Well,
Cause I think if people, you know, attended this presentation, they might learn
Yeah.
something.
Yeah.
But-
And I'm thinking maybe it's even as simple as instead of providing the huge sheet with every single project that we've done, because that does get overwhelming and whatnot, maybe it's a, you know, this is, we've appropriated $2 million, I know it's more than that, but $10 million of CPA funds over the years. 15% went to this bucket, 10% went to that, and kind of highlight, you
And
know,
then, you know,
example
and then like
projects.
what Gene said, you know, highlight some.
Yeah.
Some
But see,
projects.
The town common.
with some-
each time, each type of project. you
Yeah.
know, that, what projects have supported how, community housing, what
Yeah.
projects have been historic preservation, what projects have been open space, and what projects have been active recreation.
Yeah,
Um, yeah, the League of Women Voters will have a newsletter going out in early October. I can make sure it gets in
Oh,
that
oh, great,
newsletter.
yeah.
Would the committee have any, committee members have any appetite for being part of the presentation, PowerPoint presentation? Say Gene takes, or Reg takes the housing bucket, or the historical bucket, and someone takes recreation. Just highlight some of the things that she mentioned. I think we ought to be as
Yeah, a
inclusive as
team
possible.
approach is good like that, yeah.
Well, let's, yeah,
I would.
I would say let's start with an outline. for the
Okay.
presentation. I mean, I'll volunteer to draft up an outline.
Yeah, or maybe Lauren and I together can get something out to the committee and we can have people weigh in to take a particular part of the presentation.
Mhm.
That makes sense?
Yeah, I could do.
You think, Lauren?
Sure.
Open space, for example.
If you'd like to come up with an outline of.
Yeah,
of-
I mean, I
of
think it's-
Points that you'd like to hit,
Yeah.
maybe what we could do is I could work with all of you on one main PowerPoint presentation, and just when it comes to your section of the presentation, you can take over. So we'll just have one set of slides, with input from each of you. If you'd let me know what projects from your sector you think you'd most like to highlight, or maybe we could work together on ideas for that. And I could work on photos and kind of get a
Yeah.
draft presentation together and you can all refine it.
I think it's important that to start with an outline, to agree that it's gonna be 15 minutes
Yeah,
Mhm.
and not longer, you know, 1 or 2 slides per minute, you know.
and I think the more we're seen as a committee and not a committee of 1 or 2 people, I think the better off we are, yes. So you wanna do that, get something out, kind of a rough draft and send it out and people can weigh in as to what part of that particular presentation they can be interested in, Reg?
Could I just raise a point of information, which is, we cannot deliberate as a body by email without footballing the open meeting law. You know, we need to actually, if we're gonna collaborate on a presentation outline, then we actually have to do it in public meeting.
What you can do is each individual person works on theirs and just sends it directly to Lauren only.
Mhm.
She can compile it and then,
I realize that you can work around that way, but I was addressing, we were sort of trending the discussion towards collaborating here.
There's
And
really no.
It's, Joe, it's Laura, if I can just speak for a second. I wonder if, just in the interest of time, because that public hearing is the 11th of October, right?
Yes,
So we should probably, maybe we could talk tonight about who wants to do what piece at least and kind of narrow that down. So that, you know, we're at least knowing who's gonna submit what and do what, right? And then we have a little more time. I don't know how you feel about that. If somebody wants to volunteer, nobody has to, but if somebody wants to. Do we figure that out now?
Gene, you mentioned open space.
I'd be interested in presenting something, an
Okay.
example of an open space project and the concept of the open space money bucket. And
Okay,
and real quick, October 11th does work for everyone that wants to be there, correct?
yeah.
Oh, sorry.
Just making sure beforehand.
Dave, you wanted to take a piece of the pie?
I was gonna volunteer to come up with an overall outline that would assign, you know, the different spots.
working with Lauren, I guess.
Okay,
Yeah, cause I mean, that's sort of why we have Lauren, Dave, to sort of funnel these things through her, but I'm sure she'd be happy to have any input that you have.
Right, because I didn't know, like I mentioned before, I think it's important to start with an outline and not,
Of course.
not work the other way around.
okay,
Why don't
So-
you and I collaborate? on
Yeah,
that?
fine, I'll send you my ideas and you can take it from there.
Perfect,
Mhm.
perfect.
I would also, I'm pretty jammed volunteer time lately, especially with the November deadline coming up here. I don't know if there would be anybody else, like a former member of the committee that could help out with the housing. You should be looking at your. I'm jammed for time. They were volunteering me for the housing part of this
I don't
presentation.
know, the committee, I'm happy to help, I don't know, but. that's-
I'd love to have you help. Is it,
Peter is also in a position of being able to do a lot of helping without foot faulting on the open meeting law, because if you get into somebody wanting to file a complaint and there's been some embarrassing, difficult, foot faults that have happened recently in the last couple of years. I mean, if Dave sends suggestions to Laura saying, this is what I think you do, send them over to Joe and see what he thinks of them. And Joe sends it back to Lauren and Lauren says, send it over to somebody else. That's what's called serial communications between board members and is not allowed.
Reg, I think Joe can, and Cecilia and Lauren and I can sort that through. I would hope that we can do that the right way.
we'll be careful not to
So-
violate the open
Get
meeting
the
law.
ideas.
Yeah, we
Lauren?
don't want to do that.
Okay,
Is there any interest or appetite in holding a planning meeting that would be shorter than our normal monthly meeting, but at some point between now and then? Or would you prefer to avoid?
Well, why don't we see who's willing to participate in this? I'd do the historical piece because I'm on the historical commission, if that's helpful.
Good, got that covered,
If
great.
you want to volunteer me to do what, community housing?
Yeah.
And then,
If that's up to you, Joe.
yes, I think that'd be a great idea, be a great idea.
The only question that I have, can I
Please go.
invite me to do this? So I guess the only thing we need to do in terms of walking out here tonight is kind of what do you what is the scope, the content that you want for each of the subsections? So what is it, the committee, it's up to you folks. What did you have in mind? Or what the information was that was going to be on the PowerPoint presentation for each of the subsections?
Dave?
Well, I thought it was to just present, one good project in the category. Because.
like an example, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the overall content, what the introduction to the presentation would just be an introduction to the CPC and maybe a little bit about the process. And then here are some projects and maybe at the end reference all the materials that Lauren has put up on the site and Cecilia that, there's plenty of information. I mean,
That sounds fine to me. I guess what I would recommend though is ultimately you need somebody with a pen in the hand. Somebody actually has to do the final.
Right.
And I would recommend that it be a member, I would recommend that it be a member of the committee, working with the staff.
Right.
Or staff.
Yeah.
So whoever that is, so I think tonight you need to select someone who's ultimately gonna be making those last minor, the edits, whatever they are. My work product may come in, we're jammed for time. My work product may come in and it's not exactly what you want. Somebody's gotta get in there, redline it, turn it around and get it ready to launch for that October meeting.
Why don't
But
we
wouldn't
plan-
that be Lauren? Peter, wouldn't that be Lauren? I would think that would be Lauren.
Yeah.
I mean, I've done a million PowerPoint.
Let's get it into Lauren. And Laura and I will work with Lauren to be sure that it's what we had in mind after you've sent your outline.
No, I was volunteering to work with Lauren.
He was volunteering to work
Yeah.
on the power.
I mean.
Yeah, that's fine. No, that's great.
Okay.
But I think ultimately the
Fine with Dave,
presentation,
I think that's great. I think it does need to be a committee member,
Yeah.
not just Lauren as an excellent staff person.
Isn't?
Jean?
Okay, so we're missing recreation. That's one
That's
category.
right.
Oh, we got it
Recreation.
here.
Yeah, I can, I've just been
Yeah,
looking.
yes.
for the numbers.
Dave, do you want to do that?
Recreation. Bring up to speed.
No,
quickly.
will you be comfortable with?
You're
I
gonna
can
jump
try.
right in, okay,
It would
awesome.
be just like one project.
That's great.
Sure.
It's like, you know, these are,
I see they spent a lot of money on the pool.
yeah, that would be a good
So-
one.
Yeah,
We have some
Okay.
text that accompanies
That's a good-
pictures, a couple of pictures to
That
go
book
along
is a
with
good
it, and
one. Yeah,
it becomes a visual as well as a, you know, a verbal.
that's a perfect. one.
Nothing big, but just a way to, get our name out there.
Mr. Chair, can I make a suggestion? I want to just remind us that we spent a lot of effort and a lot of effort on the chair's part, coming up with our new updated plan that we just published in May. And it seems to me that should be and can be a perfect framework for doing what we want to do, if I understand the intent here, which is that we can look at that and each of the sections can pull out of that the really interesting stuff we want the public to know about, you know, this is the town supports funding this, and you can come in and ask for funding for this. And this is our current priorities as best we've been, but if you have some more comments about that, we'd like to hear you. And then end up with, and oh, by the way, by way of illustration, look at Rosemary Pool. It would be closed by now if we, the CPC hadn't stepped in and done that. And look at, you know, pick your Emery Grove, or look at the open space that's been opened, you know, look at all the, you know, so you have, you sort of start with a plan, the new plan. And then say, look at the wonderful things it's done. It has the potential of doing theoretically. Here's some actual examples from the last few years.
Well, let's
I was
put it
gonna say
into,
the
let's put it into,
same thing about the plan, you know. We have this plan and it has a lot of what we're talking about, what we need to present right in the plan.
It's totally up to date.
yeah, let's put it in Dave's lap. We want it to be a CPC 101 and not get too much into the weeds, but we want to expose ourselves as best we
Right,
can.
no, I get it. So we'll
Okay.
come up with a draft and circulate it.
Okay,
Everybody can put in.
Great.
their 2 cents. All right, good.
good idea.
And if you need help, like picking projects, you know, for each category, you know, we can help with that too.
So we've agreed on October 11th, 7 o'clock here in this room, correct?
Oh, is this room gonna
Yes.
be large enough?
I'd like to say no, but I don't think so.
I think we'll be running
Not
around.
sure.
ourselves.
I think we're gonna have to give away lollipops or something to get people here.
All right, moving on here, and I should have said at the start of the meeting that we're gonna try to be respectful of people's time and try to keep meetings this year to an hour and a half. So we're in good shape so far. We'll try to do that each meeting.
But Peter had one more comment. I don't know if you heard it.
No, I
There's a
didn't.
work product that you want the members or ex-members, emeritus members to provide. What's the deadline?
Friday.
Well, excuse me, should we do the outline first and then, or do you feel like we kind of already have a sense of what each of you want to?
Tell me.
I think if you know what you're going to do,
Yeah, just.
Yeah.
Send it.
yeah, send it. But let's give a deadline here for,
Come on.
Yeah, because we don't have a lot of time.
No,
Could we say,
it's not,
I mean,
yeah. We'll cross.
a
we'll
week from
cross
today, is
that.
that too long?
by the,
The 20th,
by the end of next week, or?
That's fine, the end of
that
next
would-
week.
end of next week,
Yeah.
22nd?
This is the meeting. So even if we take 2 weeks, we still have 2
Yeah,
weeks to finish that.
yeah.
And then, Joe, would you want a follow-up meeting with us and Lauren and Dave?
I think I'd wait
to
to hear
just
from
look at it?
Lauren to see what she has gotten from Dave. And then we can plan accordingly, okay?
Yeah, after the 22nd, yeah.
After the
Yeah.
22nd, is that what we said
Yeah.
from the
That-
deadline for you?
Does that sound good?
Yeah.
to you?
Yeah.
Next Friday?
Next Friday.
So those who are participating the 22nd, the 22nd to Dave.
And after that, once they have their outline, we can maybe
We can-
talk.
Well, we'll have the outline like, tomorrow.
We'll be outlined pretty quickly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Actually, we'll have to just do it with Lauren as I think about it, right?
Yes.
Yeah, you should, everything should go through.
Just with
Lauren.
staff, just with staff, yeah.
Okay, got a plan.
Thanks, Dave. Thanks, Jean.
You do. The schedule? Yeah,
Could we just wrap up the schedule
Let's
before
do
we
that.
move on? Okay,
as we look through the schedule that's been provided, are there any highlights here that make us stop and question whether we're missing anything? Or do we want to approve the schedule as
I have one comment.
proposed? Reg?
So, you know, every year I've ever been part of the CPC, which is more than I want to admit in the public. Between January 1 and the end of March, with the exception of school vacation week, we've had to meet every 2 weeks. Now it's totally driven by how many applications we get in a given year.
Yep.
But I think if we're approving the schedule, what I did is I went and put every one of these dates in my calendar, so I've got it blocked out, and we should do every 2 weeks, during January and February and March, and as a placeholder.
The other, and piggybacking off of that, that will give us a second meeting in March, which is realistically when the public hearing should be. April 10th is too close to when,
Too late.
yeah, to have notes in for the warrant.
Right, mid-March, whatever the Ides of March meeting is, closest to that is when we
Yeah.
can do the public hearing, but, you know, we can always cancel meetings if we don't need them. But if we get 9 applications like we did in 1 year, like about 2 years ago or something like that.
so right now we have January 10th.
Yeah.
Should we add the 24th then? If we're gonna do every 2
Yes.
weeks?
Yeah,
Okay.
And then do we want to have a meeting on Valentine's Day? I don't know if everyone is.
Well, if we can fix
Everyone's
that,
partners will be upset about that.
if it's every 2 weeks, then we would go to the 7th instead of the 14th. I didn't even think about that. I just second Wednesday of the month. So the 24th, and then 2 weeks from now would be February 7th instead of the 14th.
okay.
Would that work for everyone?
I think it's fine.
And then
Yes,
again,
here.
on February 21st, although I believe, is that usually school vacation?
That
week?
is
I don't know if
school
that's an
vacation
issue
week.
for
So
everyone.
January 24th, and what days in February after, February 14th, in addition to February 14th?
No, we're taking the 14th away and making the 7th instead.
Oh, that's better for me.
That's in February, right, Joe?
Correct,
Yeah.
yes.
And we can send out a revised thing, so we're not
Okay.
like trying to
Do-
keep track
do
of all
we-
these dates.
Do we want the 7th
So
and the
it would be
21st?
likely to be the 7th and the 21st. Yeah.
Does
Design-
anybody have kids in school that school vacation week is a factor? Because if not, then it's not an issue, so we could put it in as a placeholder.
Mhm.
We don't know about our 3 new members we still don't have here, but.
Why don't we put the 21st in?
Yeah,
Like you said, we
February
can always
7th,
cancel it.
February
We can always
21st.
cancel it.
And then do we need, were people saying we need a March meeting?
We'll need multiple March meetings.
So do you want to keep the 13th or would we stick with the every other week and make it?
We're meeting
six?
the 21st. The 6th and the 20th for March would be better because then we could do the public hearing on the 20th as opposed to the 27th. Or we could do the 13th and the 27th, but have the public hearing on the 13th.
You know, the 13th would be better. for
Yeah.
that, Because there's the FinCom meeting and the select board meeting.
So public hearing is gonna be on March 13th.
And, you know, this schedule
Yeah.
calls for it on April 10th.
Yeah, sometimes we do the public hearing, you know, not every 2 weeks.
Yeah, so we could do the March 13th, the public hearing.
And then we usually like to meet the 20th. The day, we don't usually like to not make the final decision at the public hearing.
Yeah.
We want to take in all the input at the public hearing, and then the following week, we then vote on the various applications.
So,
Get
so
forward.
hearing would be March 13th.
13th.
Okay, hearing.
And then the vote on the articles would be the 20th.
Right,
And then we'd have another meeting in March?
20th for the vote.
No, okay, so the 13th and the 20th would be the only two in March.
And then, yeah, and then April tends to be pretty quiet.
Don't jinx us though.
And then you and I come up with the dates for select board and FinCom.
Yeah, we'll work with them when it gets closer, but it's usually around the same time as the public hearing.
But then why does it say later, April 10th, public hearing and,
It's not quite right. I
No,
think.
just a
votes on
draft.
articles?
It was just a draft
Just
to
a
a
draft.
question.
So we get rid of that, and get rid of the April 10th completely?
Yes,
Cause then the annual town meeting should start on May 6th.
Okay.
Was that?
That's
was
the
that
first
in-
Monday.
Yeah, okay.
So we
Can
should
we
put
get
a
a
date on
revised-
that.
revised
We should
schedule.
put
And then
in
do we
there.
need meetings in May and June right now?
We'll
Read that.
have it'll be May 6th, May 8th, May 13th. Usually hold 4 days, May 15th, which will be annual town meeting days. CPC is there until CPC articles go, and then any town meeting members obviously are there the whole time, but if they're not,
But typically, we don't have a meeting in May
no, yeah, they're
for
just,
any other purpose than meeting as a committee at town meeting.
yeah.
So I'll remove the May date.
Yep.
That's in there now and just leave town meeting as May 6th.
And then
Yeah.
With
we
the
have our
understanding
wrap-up
it could be-
meeting in June,
Wrap up.
and then, quick for the summer.
Okay,
Okay,
thank you.
And I imagine we want to schedule June closer, because I'm sure people don't have June plans scheduled yet.
So,
Well, normally there are not, out of cycle applications. So there's nothing to meet about, during the summer.
so do you want to leave that on the second Wednesday or do you want it earlier in the month? Leave it the 12th? Okay.
yeah. We have to vote on this? Vote or
No,
revision? No? Okay,
Thank you.
so we'll wait to get a revision.
Revised. Thank you.
Very good. Okay. The report on the park and recreation funding. I think, Dave, you had a question. Is this what got us on the agenda here? Do you have
Yeah,
some
but-
question about? Park
Well,
and Rec?
no, I was just, thinking that, looking at what was published on the CPC website, it had the different categories. Open space and recreation and housing, but then there was a bucket of things that really didn't, it was like money that came out of the free cash.
Yeah,
But it was a mixture of different things, and so I thought it would be useful to try to put everything in the right category and then see how the numbers played out, so I took that information, I made up a little spreadsheet, and, but then, I was talking to Peter and he suggested that was already done by Dave Davis, which I think is what you had,
yeah,
Or
that
what you
should
and
be
Lauren had put-
reattached to,
which I thought was interesting. And then, there was a discussion about what percentage of the park and rec funding is coming from the CPC.
so
And,
for,
and,
for
and,
that,
yeah, so somebody was gonna do a little research to find out, what was being spent and all that, because, I think I said this before, it seemed to me that, a lot of the CPC money was going to the park and
Park
rec.
and Rec?
And then what happened recently with this, Claxon Field, it got me thinking, what is the rationale? Say Park and Rec to say, okay, we're gonna get so much money from CPC and so much money from the town. I mean, how was that rationalized? Because, I remember, us beating up, the housing authority, with regard to, well, what are the other sources of funding and all that. So it seemed to me that there should be some rationale that would explain, if there was a $2 million project, how much comes from the town, how much comes from the CPC or what, am I making sense? It's like, it seems to me it's just like a, we'll see how much we can get
And this is the Park and Rec projects on capital projects.
Yeah, capital, yeah.
General budget, yeah.
Absolutely.
So I did a little bit of research back, at least until FY 17. Just on Park and Rec related capital projects. Again, this doesn't include anything operating or maintenance related. And how much of it was CPA funded versus how much of it was the town funded. And it's 16 million and almost 17 million has been funded through CPA, and then 12 million has been funded through the town. So if I were to look at a percentage.
So yeah, it's a 16 million of it, that also includes the full debt authorization. Full,
Yes, it includes the full amount.
so that's a little, I mean, that skews it a little bit.
Yeah. So it's 60-40-ish CPA versus town,
So the CPA is the main funder of recreation.
at least since 2017. For capital related projects. I know part of the conversation when deciding to pull Claxton did involve, you know, there's a couple of planned projects for Park and Rec that are coming at the capital plan in the next 2 years. With the uncertainty of the dollar value of Claxton and knowing that the housing authority, it was kind of a strategic move.
Yeah, no, I get that.
Can I?
Peter?
Or something? I just, because I think Dave's question is a very good one.
Yeah.
But I think in fairness to the process and that we're being consistent in our analysis. Seems to me that we should, right now, what you're doing is you're weighing the full 30-year expenditure that you're gonna use that's gonna fund that $16 million. So in the continuing, in the next 20 years or so, the Park and Rec is gonna continue to fund its capital projects, it's gonna weigh it back. So one way of approaching it is, sure, we can let people know that there's a full bond amount for $16 million. But we probably should show what it is that we've actually paid on that bond through today's date, because that would be I think that would be at least a consistent approach. Which is,
Yeah, I
right,
agree.
so that. I
Yeah,
think you're waiting, I think just pulling in the full 16 million kind of unfairly weights it. I mean, distorts it a little bit.
and this is solely appropriated, it's not spent. I do want to be clear with that. Because the spending does not always match up with the appropriation. If things come in under, if projects get canceled or delayed and whatnot, so it's not the most accurate representation, but it's a informational kind of, this is around what it is.
Well, my concern though, I mean, we have like one identifier, one issue right there that we can point at and say, that's really gonna distort the figure, right? Because you loaded it up with $16 million. When we've only really paid for out of CPC receipts, a fraction of that. So I just want to be fair, that's all, or at least consistent with, and rather than having, because otherwise we're explaining these things like I try to do in footnotes and in long explanations that I hope people can hold on to. So that's my only comment.
Yeah,
But you're right, for everybody's purpose, it's a tool, you know, and
Yeah.
my only suggestion is perhaps we can fine tune it a little bit so that it's a little.
yeah, and like I said, that would be more on the spending versus this is just the
Yeah,
appropriate.
well, I mean, when I did my little back of the envelope calculation, which I'd be glad to
Yeah.
send.
Yeah.
You know, I tried to account for that, but I
Yeah.
made some estimates of what the yearly bond, payment was,
Yeah,
Mr.
but,
Chair,
but it was just a guess.
Rich?
could I maybe take another crack at Dave's question from a top-down point of view? Because the numbers are misleading, right, Peter? I think another way to answer the question, I'm looking at Peter to help me with my memory and maybe also you, Celia. But if you look at it holistically, the last big chunk of support for community housing from CPA funds in the last 20 years. There are two of them. One is about $1 million that went to the High Rock Homes redevelopment. And the second one I remember is about $500,000. It went to a community home from Charles River Art. And I think there were some more smaller projects, but that was like in the 2000, the aughts period of time, 2005, 2010, 12, somewhere in there. For historic restoration, there have been a bunch of projects, but the biggie was the town hall renovation. That was, a big commitment of support, regardless of where we're at, the bonds. And then the next one, and then the most recent one was the Emery Grover one. So those are sort of the big, on the top line, that what I remember, there have been some town clerk projects and other historic preservation projects, smaller ones. And then the Parks and Rec has been pretty steady, but the biggie that really distorts everything, distorts the wheel, was Rosemary Pool. It was a really big decision to do that. And then the open space one, it's been a whole collection of smaller things as targets of opportunities as they come along. So there isn't one biggie that where we're buying 100 acres of land or anything like that. And that's, another way of sort of looking at it from the top down.
Yeah, but I would just say, I don't mean to belabor this, but my question is not so much in the past, but moving forward, and it's like, how are these things determined? Because like a lot of this stuff is coming from the town. It's not coming from like third party.
Well, if I may, because I think I'm the longest serving person, I can say it's been sort of first come, first serve. And it's been a subject of debate as long as I've been on the committee, which is since 2010, I think and there are two schools of thought that there ought to be, some sort of fairness principle, but it's really hard to come up with that. And then the other one is, well, the one thing that doesn't make sense is if there are dollars sitting in a bank account earning 0.5% interest or something and not being put to work somewhere in the community for some purpose. That's always been a judgment call.
Real quick, and this might be interesting and a little bit more along the workaround of what you were suggesting, Peter, is I just removed the RRC project altogether from the calculation because it is such a huge standalone project, and it did sway the numbers a little bit so that it's closer to 5 million in CPA funding and 8 million in town funding, which is 60-40-ish, the opposite direction. And the Rosemary is the only debt project that's related to Park and Recreation. So this would
Okay,
be a little bit more accurate.
Jean?
Yeah, since CPA funds may be used on private projects, though of course the big ones we've had in our town have been town projects, and the housing authority is an exception, but that's a public entity. I thought it would be helpful for each of the 4 categories if we could think of a project that was private. I know there's been historic preservation projects that were done for I think 2 of our churches. And I just mentioned them, or if you have a photo of them or something. I think it was the Unitarian Church, a cupola, or and the Baptist Church porch. And then on the housing side, I know there's a small home repair program that's funded through community preservation, and it goes through the Affordable Housing Trust Fund, but it has to do with repairs of private homes in small amounts for low-income people. Some project like that for each one. And of course, we did the garden project last year, the community gardens. It's a private project. I just don't think it's worth mentioning so people understand that it's not all.
You're talking about the presentation?
Yes, part of the
Yeah,
presentation,
yeah,
just
yeah.
a mention of that.
Good point, good
Or
point.
giving a couple of examples.
Laura?
I was just gonna say, in the attachments to the meeting, there is a spreadsheet.
Yes.
Let me find it. Which speaks to the funding activity in each category from 2006 to 2023. If you want, we can take a look at that. Dave, I don't know if, if it's not answering your question. I understand your question is like, how.
My question's answered as far as.
Okay. I get your question though. I understand it. I understand where you're coming from for sure.
All right, reference,
And in
I'm sorry.
appendix, oh, sorry, Joe, one more thing, Appendix A of the CPA plan also has a spreadsheet which does have Peter's, some footnotes, but it's a better descriptor of the effects of bond payments and what's been spent versus allocated, than just looking at what's been allocated and not considering anything else. So that's been attached to the CPA plan if anyone wants to look at that.
Yep. Laura, Lauren, or Cecilia, do you want to comment on the final piece of our agenda, the Appendix A? Is there any need to verbalize what we see here in numbers?
No, I think that's just the most accurate representation of the appropriation and what categories they fall into. It stemmed from I don't remember what news it was in, but the
The
news
Boston
article.
Globe article.
Boston
Yeah.
Globe, the Boston Globe article that said we were under allocating money towards housing. This is what should have been. The numbers that should have
I
been.
think it reflects Peter's concern,
Yeah.
and it's reflected here in the new CPA activity. Okay, any other comments? Any other add-ons to the agenda that people would like to make?
Does there need to be any sort of vote to decide that this is going to replace the appendix? No, you can just swap it out.
We're okay as it is, yep. All right, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So
I'm-
moved.
I second.
Dave,
So moved.
Second.
okay. How do you vote? Dave Harris,
Oh, aye.
Jean,
Aye.
Reg,
Rich Foster votes aye.
Laura?
Yay, aye.
Yay, aye. Okay, well, we came close to the hour and a half. We'll do our best to get the work done in a timely fashion.
Yeah, when you look over these minutes, you can see some very long meetings.
Yes, yeah, and a great job, Lauren, with the minutes, and we'll get the rest of them done at some point. Okay, we are adjourned.
All right,
Thank you,
thanks,
everyone.
Joe. Thanks, everybody.